Hello guys. You are very welcome to my YouTube channel Famous Facts. Before going to the details of today's videos, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be updated about my next video. Today we are going to talk about the basic pillars of Islam, also known as the 5 pillars of Islam, which are the fundamental acts of worship that are considered obligatory for all Muslims. Okay, then let's get started. The first and most important pillar of Islam is Shahada. Shahada, which is called faith, the Shahada is the declaration of faith in Islam. It is the testimony that there is no God but Allah, and the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. Uttering the Shahada is a declaration of one's belief and acceptance of Islam. Once a person has belief in the first pillar, then the next 4 pillars are applied to every person. The second important pillar is Salah, which is called prayer. Salah refers to the ritual prayers performed by Muslims 5 times a day. These prayers are a way of establishing a direct connection and communication with Allah. They are performed at specific times throughout the day and involve the recitation of verses from the Quran and various physical movements. But there are certain conditions when Salah, prayer, is not mandatory or becomes optional for Muslims. Here are a few scenarios. The first scenario is prepubescent children. Salah is not obligatory for children who have not reached puberty. However, it is encouraged to gradually introduce and teach them about prayer so that they develop the habit and understanding of Salah at an early age. Second is mentally incapacitated individuals. Those who are mentally incapacitated or do not have the mental capacity to comprehend the obligation of Salah are not required to perform it. However, if they are capable of performing any actions related to prayer, it is recommended to do so. Third is illness or health conditions. If an individual is suffering from an illness or health condition that prevents them from performing the physical movements of Salah or poses a risk to their health, they are excused from the obligation. They can perform alternative forms of worship or make up missed prayers once they have recovered. Fourth is menstruation and postpartum bleeding. Women who are experiencing menstruation or postpartum bleeding are exempted from performing the physical acts of Salah during that period. However, they are required to make up the missed prayers after the cessation of bleeding. Fifth is travel. During travel, there is flexibility in performing the complete set of prayers. Muslims have the option to shorten or combine their prayers depending on the distance and duration of travel. This is known as qasr, shortening, and jam, combining, of prayers. It is important to note that while these conditions exempt individuals from the obligatory nature of Salah, it is still recommended to engage in acts of worship and connect with Allah to the best of their abilities. Optional prayers, sunnah, nafil, can still be performed voluntarily even when obligatory prayers are not mandatory. The third important pillar is zakat, which is called charity. Zakat is the obligatory act of giving a portion of one's wealth to the less fortunate. It is seen as a means of purifying one's wealth and assisting those in need. Muslims are required to give a percentage of their annual savings or income to support the poor and needy. Zakat or charitable giving is also obligatory for eligible Muslims under certain conditions. However, there are situations when zakat may not be mandatory or becomes optional. Here are a few scenarios. The first scenario is insufficient wealth. Zakat is not obligatory for individuals who do not meet the minimum threshold of wealth, nisab, for zakat. The nisab is determined based on the value of gold or silver equivalent to a specific weight. If a person's wealth falls below the nisab, zakat is not mandatory for them. Second is basic needs and debts. If an individual possesses wealth, but it is essential for their basic needs and is necessary for their livelihood, such as their primary residence, household items, clothing, and personal vehicles, then zakat is not mandatory on those assets. Additionally, if an individual has debts or financial obligations that exceed their wealth, they are not required to give zakat until their financial situation improves. Third is non-Muslims. Zakat is specifically intended for eligible Muslims. Non-Muslims are not obligated to give zakat as it is an Islamic obligation. However, they may engage in voluntary acts of charity according to their respective beliefs and practices. And fourth is children and dependents. Zakat is not obligatory for children who have not reached the age of puberty or for dependents who do not possess their own wealth. However, parents or guardians may give zakat on behalf of their dependent children if they wish to do so. It is important to note that even if zakat is not mandatory in these situations, Muslims are encouraged to engage in voluntary acts of charity and give generously to those in need, as it is considered a virtuous act in Islam. The fourth important pillar is Sawm, which is called fasting. Sawm is the practice of fasting from dawn until sunset during the month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. Muslims abstain from food, drink, and other physical needs during daylight hours. Fasting is considered a form of self-discipline, reflection, and increased devotion to Allah. In fasting also there are certain conditions when fasting during Ramadan is not mandatory or becomes optional for Muslims. Here are a few scenarios. The first scenario is illness or health conditions. If an individual is ill or has a health condition that could worsen or be negatively impacted by fasting, they are exempt from fasting. It is recommended for them to refrain from fasting and make up the missed days of fasting at a later time when they have recovered or when their health condition improves. Second is travel. When traveling, Muslims have the option to either continue fasting or break their fast. If the journey is long and strenuous, and fasting would impose excessive hardship, individuals are permitted to break their fast and make up the missed days of fasting after Ramadan. Third is pregnancy and breastfeeding. Pregnant or breastfeeding women may choose not to fast if they believe it would be detrimental to their health or the health of their baby. They can opt to postpone their fasting and make up the missed days at a later time when they are able to do so. Fourth is menstruation and postpartum bleeding. Women who are experiencing menstruation or postpartum bleeding are not permitted to fast during that period. They are exempt from fasting, and they are required to make up for the missed days of fasting after the cessation of bleeding. Fifth is elderly or chronically ill individuals. Elderly individuals and those with chronic illnesses that make fasting excessively difficult or pose a risk to their health are exempt from fasting. They can forego fasting and make up the missed days of fasting later, or they may provide an alternative form of worship such as feeding the poor, fidya, for each missed day. It is important to note that while these conditions exempt individuals from the obligatory nature of fasting during Ramadan, they can still engage in acts of worship and spiritual activities to the best of their abilities. It is recommended to seek guidance from a knowledgeable religious authority or scholar to determine the appropriate course of action based on individual circumstances. The fifth and last important pillar is Hajj, which is called pilgrimage. Hajj is the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. It is an obligatory religious duty for Muslims who are physically and financially capable of undertaking the journey. Hajj is performed during the Islamic month of Dhul Hijjah and involves specific rituals and acts of worship at various locations in and around Mecca. In the Hajj as well, there are certain conditions when Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca, is not mandatory or becomes optional for Muslims. Here are a few scenarios. The first scenario is financial capability. Hajj is only obligatory for those who have the financial means to undertake the journey. If an individual does not have sufficient funds to cover the expenses of Hajj, it is not obligatory upon them. However, if their financial situation improves in the future, they may choose to perform Hajj at that time. Second is physical capability. Hajj requires physical stamina and the ability to undertake the rituals involved. If an individual has a physical ailment, illness, or disability that prevents them from safely participating in the Hajj rituals or poses a risk to their health, they are exempt from the obligation. Third is travel restrictions. In certain circumstances, travel restrictions or political situations may prevent Muslims from undertaking the Hajj pilgrimage. If there are travel restrictions imposed by authorities or if there is unrest in the region that poses a threat to the safety of pilgrims, individuals are not obligated to perform Hajj during that time. Fifth is prioritizing family and financial responsibilities. If an individual has significant family or financial obligations that require their attention, and fulfilling these obligations would be compromised by performing Hajj, they may delay their pilgrimage until they are able to fulfill these responsibilities. It is important to note that while Hajj may not be mandatory in these situations, it is still highly encouraged and virtuous to perform Hajj when one is able to do so. Muslims should strive to fulfill this important pillar of Islam when they have the means and opportunity. Here I want to give a very important message. The Almighty Allah has given us some flexibility only in certain conditions. We should not use these conditions as an excuse not to follow all the pillars of Islam. These 5 pillars of Islam serve as a foundation for the practice of the religion and are considered essential for a Muslim's spiritual growth and connection with Allah. I hope you liked the video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to stay updated with fascinating facts and content. Thank you for watching this video. See you soon with the next interesting and informative video.